Nedarim Daf contains 3 mishnayos. We begin with a halacha, which the Gemara is going to back up from a story with Nebuchadnezzar and Tzidkiyahu. It's a halacha about being matir and neder. Then we'll get to the first mishnah, which talks about the halacha of nolad and when a nolad is not a problem. And then we'll get to 2 additional mishnayos, which we'll talk about if you could use a mitzvah as a Pesach, and we could use an obligation that a person has to pay money as a Pesach to be matir neder. So let's begin. The Gemara says we have a brayso that says that somebody who makes an isra on his friend can only be matir the neder in front of that person. You cannot be matir a neder that's relevant to someone else without the presence of that person there. We didn't know that from. So the Gemara brings it from the pasuk which we discussed in the last Gemara, where Hashem said to Moshe when he was in Midian, "Go to Mitzrayim." Now, Hashem had to be matir Moshe's neder there because Moshe had made a neder to Yisro. Moshe made a shvua actually to Yisro that he wasn't going to leave Midian and go back to Mitzrayim. Like it says, Vayoel Moshe, and Vayoel means that he made a neder. Now, why did Hashem tell him to go to Midian to do that? So obviously he was saying to him, go in front of Yisro, and there will be matir your neder there because you made the neder to him, you made the shvua to him. In order to be matir, it has to be in his presence, he has to be aware of it. Now, there is the concept that you have to make the neder in front of the person that you made the neder to. Gemara adds that the pasuk says, "Foli lech shuv Mitzrayim ki meisukal anashim." The reason for the neder is because you had a heter that the people that he was afraid of had died. Now, the Gemara says you find the same thing with Nebuchadnezzar and Tzidkiyahu. The Gemara brings the story where it says that Tzidkiyahu rebelled against Nebuchadnezzar. What was that? It says Tzidkiyahu once walked in on Nebuchadnezzar and he found that he was eating a live rabbit. The Rishonim discuss if that means a raw rabbit or actually a live rabbit. But either way, Tzidkiyahu caught him doing something embarrassing. So Nebuchadnezzar was embarrassed and he didn't want the word that he was doing this to get out. So he made Tzidkiyahu swear that he wasn't going to reveal it to anybody, so that the incident should not get out. He did swear, but then Tzidkiyahu was in such pain over keeping his word, over keeping the secret to himself, that he went to the Sanhedrin and he was matir. He was shoel heter, and he got a heter on the shavua that he made, and he told people. And then, of course, the word got back to Nebuchadnezzar that the word was out, and Tzidkiyahu had obviously spilled the beans. So he went and he called the Sanhedrin and Tzidkiyahu, and he said, "You see what happened over here? You see what Tzidkiyahu did to me? Did he not swear in the name of heaven that he's not going to reveal it?" So they said, well, he was matir neder. So he asked them, are you allowed to just be matir shvua like that? So they said, yes, you're allowed to. So Nebuchadnezzar asked, are you allowed to do that not in front of the person that he made the shvua to? And they said, no, you have to be matir shvua in front of the person he made the shvua to. So he said, well, why did you allow him to be matir shvua then? Did you not know that he made the shvua to me, and therefore he has to do it in front of me? So therefore it says, he quoted, Yeshvu Aretz Yidmu Ziknei Bastion, they sat on the ground. So it says they pulled the cushions out from under them and they sat on the floor. Now the Rishonim explained that he had brought them and put them on golden chairs and said, tell me the Torah that you have. And when he got to the Parsha of Shavua, that's when he stopped them and he had this conversation. Now I get to the next mission, which returns to the concept of nolad. And nolad, as we saw earlier, is when you have a circumstance that is highly unusual and cannot serve as a Pesach according to one opinion. So it's Machokas Tanaim whether nolad could serve as a Pesach or not. Generally, a Pesach is when some circumstance has come up that had that circumstance existed at the time of the neder, you never would have made the neder. Nolad is where it's completely infrequent and you never could have foreseen that such a circumstance would have come up. Other Rishonim explain that nolad means that the circumstance did not exist in the world and it was created in the world at a later stage. That doesn't count as a valid Pesach according to one opinion. So the Gemara is going to show there's a type of nolad that even though it's nolad, even according to the opinion that nolad you can use for Pesach, this type of nolad you could. And what's that? That's where he specifically said something in the neder that showed that he never would have made the neder had that circumstance existed. And therefore it's as if he put an escape hatch in the neder if something like this will come up. So what's the case? The Gemara quotes Rabbi Meir says there are certain things which are like nolad, but they are not nolad. The Gemara is going to question what that language means. It's like nolad, but it's not nolad. What's that? So the Gemara says, well, the Chachamim do not agree, but the examples are, if somebody says, I'm not going to marry this lady because her father is evil, and then the father either dies or he does tshuva. Now those are things he could not have expected, so those are nolad. So now could he be matir the neder? So Meir says yes, he could. Another example is if he says I'm not going to enter this house because it has an evil dog in it, and then they tell, or it has a snake in it, and then they tell him the dog or the snake died. So that's also something you couldn't expect. Why would you assume that they would die? So these are like nolad, but they're not nolad, and therefore, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you're allowed to be matir neder based upon these. And according to the Chachamim, you are not. Okay, the Gemara now begins. The Gemara wants to know what is the reason that these things you could use for a neder, even though they are nolad. So the Gemara gives two explanations. One explanation is, like we said, because the person blamed his neder on this factor. So if that factor disappears, it says if he said the only reason I'm doing it is because of this, so if it's not there, it should be canceled. The second explanation is that it's as there is no such heter. The case is that he got it wrong. The father of the woman had already died or done tshuva beforehand, or the dog, the snake in the house, had already been killed beforehand. So therefore, the neder never really existed. It was already bala olam, according to those Rishonim. It was already in the world that this condition that cancels the neder was present, and therefore it's a mistake that he made all along. So Mara Sakasha, we have a different brisa that talks about a mistake. Why do you need two brises talking about a mistake? It makes sense if this brisa is talking about the fact that he blamed his neder on something specific, and therefore the brisa which we're going to bring coming up is talking about where he made a mistake. Why would I need two making a mistake? And the Gemara doesn't give an answer. The Gemara leaves it as a kasha. But what's that brisa? The brisa says that if somebody says, I'm going to make a net, I'm not going to marry a certain woman because she's ugly, but the truth is that he was wrong and she really was not ugly. Or because he says because she's dark skinned, but it turns out that she's light skinned. Or because she's short and she's really tall. All these cases, the neder is not valid, not because she is ugly and became pretty, the brisa says, or that she was dark skinned and became light skinned, or she was short and became tall. But the neder was a mistake all along. The condition that he thought existed did not exist all along. So that's the brisa. And the Gemara again says, obviously, our Mishnah then must not be talking about the same case. Our Mishnah must be talking about where he blamed it on something, but the condition really was as he thought. It just later changed. All right, we're now beginning the next Mishnah, which discusses another lacha Rabbi Meir said about using a Pesach that a person is violating a mitzvah that he was not aware of. So Rabbi Meir says another valid Pesach is if they tell him, did you know the time that you made the neder that you're being over on a mitzvah d'oraisa? For example, you're over on leisikim because the reason you made the neder is to take revenge on somebody. Or you're violating leisita because the reason you made the neder is to bear a grudge on somebody. Or you're doing it because you hate someone, that's an isolosis. Or you're violating v'afta l'reacha kamecha. You're not doing to him as you would like him to do to you. Or perhaps you're asering hana, and now you can't give a person tzedakah if he'll ask you. Like it says, v'che'achicha imach, you'll violate that. So all these things are valid Pesachs to get out of it, because you won't be able to fulfill these mitzvahs or you'll violate these isurim. So Gemara just asks, why is it a violation of the isur v'che'achicha imach? You'll make a neder, you're not going to give hana to someone, now you can't give him tzedakah, you violate v'che'achicha imach. Let him go to the guy by tzedakah and take tzedakah from him. Why is it this person's responsibility to support him? The Gemara says a person will generally only go to the guy with tzedakah as a last resort. Usually he'll go to his friends and family first. So if he's going to come to you and he didn't go to the guy by tzedakah yet, he's not holding by going to the guy by tzedakah, and you can't because you made a neder, you can't help him, that's a violation of v'che'achicha imach. Now begin the third and last Mishnah for the Daf, and this Mishnah refers to the fact that you can make a Pesach out of the fact that somebody's now going to have to pay up his wife's ksuba. That is, he makes a neder. That's a problem on their marriage, and he'll be forced to divorce her and give her ksuba. So the Mishnah actually brings a story. The Mishnah says there was a guy who had a ksuba on him of 400 dinarim, and he wanted to make the neder. He made the neder, and they came to Rabbi Akiva, and he obligated him to pay the 400 dinar ksuba, an exorbitant sum of money. The average ksuba is 200 zuz, which is 2 dinar. So he said, Rebbe, my father left me 800 a dinar. I split it with my brother. We each got 400. At least let me take 200, and I'll give my wife 200. I don't want to have to give her all 400. So Rabbi Kiva said you'll have to spend every last penny on the ksuba. You cannot get out of it. Even if you have to sell the hair on your head, you're going to pay off that ksuba. So he said, if I would have known that was the halacha, I never would have made the neder in the first place. And Rabbi Kiva said, that's a heter, mater neder based on that. So Mara asks, why does he have to pay her the cash for the ksuba? We have a halacha that metaltalin, movable objects, cannot be forced to use to pay for a ksuba. Only you can take land for the ksuba. So my answer is not a problem. He didn't have actually cash 400 dinar. He had land worth 400 dinar. His father left him 800 dinar worth of land. So I asks, but then what's the business about selling your hair? Selling your hair is metalton. Mara says, we didn't mean to say he's going to sell his hair to pay his wife. He meant even if the only thing he'll have left to eat to support himself is his hair, he'll sell that, then he'll have to give away all the land to pay off the ksuba. So Mara asks, so you mean to say that when you take property away from somebody who owes money, you don't leave him the basic necessities? Don't we discuss in a different masechta whether you leave the basic necessities or not? Shouldn't you leave him money at least to buy food? Mara says, no, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to take away the money. He's not going to buy food. He's even going to have to sell the hair of his head. It doesn't mean to say that the ksuba is not going to be canceled. He's going to have to pay it eventually. And even if he's going to eat by living off the hair of his head or whatever it is, the ksuba is going to stay there until he gets the money to pay it and she can collect her rightful ksuba.